Hi, I'm Loredana Hager. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I will be showing you how to make salsa di carne or salsa con carne, which when translated in English, it means sauce with meat. This is another version or another type of tomato-based sauce that is used in many dishes. I like to make the sauce and using it either with manicotti or gnocchi or other kind of pasta dishes, as well as a lasagna. It's a richer sauce versus salsa semplice, which is a plain or simple sauce. I've already made a video on my YouTube channel how to make the simple sauce. So if you're interested in looking at that version of tomato sauce, you can look it up and see how to make it. Here in front of me, I have the basic ingredients that are involved in this recipe. Of course, we have tomatoes. In this case, they're in a tomato can. If you're fortunate enough to be in an area where you can get fresh tomatoes in your garden all year round, that's great. Please use San Marzano tomatoes. It's a type of tomato. And again, in my other YouTube channel, you will see the type of tomatoes that is used. If you cannot find fresh tomatoes, if they're not in season in your area, definitely you can use those in canned tomatoes. But again, make sure that they are San Marzano. Usually there's just basic basil, some tomato puree, and whole tomatoes. That's what you want. You will also need, of course, meat. In this case, I'm using fresh Italian sausage. And it's sweet sausage, it's not spicy. In this recipe, because it is a sauce made with meat or flavored with meat, you could also use a mixture of beef and pork, but I just like using Italian sausage. You will also need, of course, extra virgin olive oil, some salt, a couple of garlic cloves, and last but not least, I like using a food mill or in Italian called passatutto. And again, if you watch my other video of how to make the plain sauce, you will see the mechanism and why I prefer using that over a food processor. Of course, if you don't have access to a food mill or passatutto, you definitely need a food processor to make to get a smooth sauce as an end product. So these are basic ingredients. So follow me to the stove and I'll show you how to put them all together. When I make meat sauce, I like to put together large amounts of tomatoes and meat because I like to have quite a bit of sauce at the end as I freeze it and have it handy for many dishes that I use this. In this pot right now, I've put in about 3 links of fresh Italian sweet sausage. It's about 250 grams, about a quarter kilogram. I will be using about 4 kilos of tomatoes that are in the can that I showed earlier. What you see in this pot along with the sausage are about 4 cloves of garlic. There are about 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And as well, what I've added to this is about half a cup of water. I've set the temperature on the stove around medium-high, and as you can see, the purpose is to try to get it to boil. As you see, it's starting to boil, and I will have this temperature at this level until the water evaporates, and then we're going to start browning the meat. We do this before we add the tomato sauce. 10 minutes have gone by, and as you can see, the water has evaporated, and what's been left behind, of course, is the olive oil, the garlic, and the sausage. The temperature was set before a medium-high, lower it to a medium, and now you want it to allow the sausage to be browned. It's important to keep the sausage whole. Don't cut it in pieces because you don't want it to disintegrate and bits and pieces fall into the sauce. You'll be using the sauce for other dishes, so you want to flavor it, but you don't want to have pieces of meat in it. So it's important that you keep the sausage links whole. As well, you want to use the right kind of pot that you can scrape the bottom. You can see I have a kind of a scraper spatula in my hand. So as the sausage starts to brown, part of it will tend to stick, part of the garlic will tend to stick, and you want to scrape that before you add the sauce to it. So it's important that you use the right kind of pot. So we'll give it a few minutes, turn it ever so often, and I'll show later what it's supposed to look like before you add the tomato sauce. The sausage has now been cooking for about 7 or 8 minutes at medium. You can see it's browned on one side. I flipped it over. it's not quite done on the other side, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes. And it's getting to get a little brown. That's okay. Before we add the sauce, as I mentioned earlier, you want to scrape some of this because that will add flavor. You also want to remove this so that the sauce will not stick as it starts to cook down once it's added. So we'll give it a few more minutes to get it brown on the other side, and then we'll be adding the sauce. I think the sausage is done. It's nice and brown on both sides. The garlic too is brown, and that's fine as long as you make sure that it doesn't get burned. As I mentioned earlier, of course, as this was cooking, you get this little layer stuck at the bottom. Just make sure you scrape it off as much as you can. And then we'll start adding the tomatoes, the tomato sauce. As you can see, and I want to show you with a spoon, it's nice and smooth. I used a food mill, and so it came out, the pulp has become a very smooth and creamy kind of tomato sauce. So I'm going to add a little bit. And I will add the rest so it won't be splattering all over the stove and me. And so as you add that, just make sure that as you've added this liquid, you're scraping some of that brown layer that formed as a result of cooking the sausage. Okay, we'll put it back on the stove here and turn this back on. What I want to do is now add the rest of the tomato sauce and then bring it to a gentle boil. The tomato sauce, as you can see, has come to a boil. So I'm going to be lowering the temperature to low, to a simmer. As you can see, there's quite a bit of tomato sauce. And the wonderful 3 links of sausages are all on the bottom, deep down, continuing to flavor the tomato sauce. I've added a bit of salt, about a half a teaspoon so far. What I'm going to wait is for this to be reduced much more before I give it a taste to see if more salt needs to be added. I want to make sure that it's not too salty. And if I were to add it all at once right now, then by the time it gets reduced, it might end up being too salty, and you don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave it uncovered, but to make sure that nothing else lands in it that should not be, I'm going to put this to cover it. And again, it's on low. You want it to simmer very slowly. That's the trick or the key step to make sure that you have a wonderful sauce at the end, to be patient, to let it simmer for a good 1.5 to 2 hours. So we'll definitely be back, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like by the end. You do want to stir it on a regular basis to make sure that it doesn't stick at the bottom, but keep an eye on it. Definitely do not go for a walk or go out on an errand knowing, oh, it'll be done in a couple of hours. You want to make sure that you're around nearby to stir it, but definitely it is a long process, so you'll have to be a little patient before the end product is ready for you to have and taste. Well, 2.5 hours later, this is what this sauce looks like. Look how beautiful and thick it simmered for this period of time. The starting line was right over here, and it reduced slowly over a period of time, as I said, over 2 hours, to get this wonderful end product. As I mentioned earlier, I had to taste for salt because I knew what I started out with, which was only a half a teaspoon, would not be enough, and indeed, I tasted it a couple of times during the process, and I added an additional whole teaspoon of salt. So I've taken out the 3 links of sausage that we started out with. Look how beautiful this is. And this is what I like about this recipe, is not only that I have a pot of meat sauce that I can use for other recipes later on, but I also have some wonderful sausage to eat as an entree with a side salad. But I thought I'd also show you how I enjoy this particular meat sauce, and it is with this wonderful homemade gnocchi. These are my homemade gnocchi. And so I will have to, I guess, show you at a later time how I make these. But I've got a pot with water boiling. And so I'm gonna cook these gnocchi and I'll show you later how they are wonderfully complemented with this meat sauce that I prepared today. Here's the final product. The homemade gnocchi that I made a while back that I just finished cooking and that I have generously covered with the meat sauce that we just finished making, and I've added some grated Parmesan cheese and of course the sweet Italian sausage that flavored that wonderful tomato sauce. So I'm going to take a bite of this sausage first. Because of the fact that it cooked in that tomato sauce for so long, it just literally melts in your mouth. Now, the gnocchi. I can't just have one, I need to take more than one. These are so good. These gnocchi are made with potatoes. And I promise I will make a video and show you how to make these. But again, the sauce can be used in so many other recipes, lasagna, manicotti, other kind of pasta dishes where it needs a more robust flavor that accompanies the dish. In this case, I decided to serve it with gnocchi. So I hope you try this recipe and buon appetito.